Evening, everybody, and welcome to the 22nd episode of The Soccer Scene with myself and my guest again, Noel O'Connor. Although at this stage, Noel calling you a guest, I'd say co-presenter would be more accurate, I'd imagine. But Noel, we're here to digest, obviously, weekend of football for Treaty United. Great win against Cobh Ramblers, their second win in 3 games. It's been a great weekend, I suppose, for Limerick overall. Noel, really, you've had the win for the soccer team, obviously the win for the hurling team to get into the All-Ireland final, and at the moment we have the JP McManus Pro-Am in it there, so it's been a good sporting weekend. But obviously our focus will be Treaty United. As I said, 2 wins in 3 games. I suppose in one way it was a great win for them. Another way it was a relief to get the victory against Cobh, who obviously had a managerial change and haven't been in great form because Wexford won again, so it just keeps that battle really close as well for Treaty.
Yeah, it does. And look, it was good to bounce back after the Cork game. And look, I thought they certainly deserved the win, particularly in the first half performance. They totally dominated that first half, got an early goal, and like what's kind of been a bit typical, you know, they've had chances maybe to go 2 and possibly 3-0 up, particularly against the teams below them, the Athlons and the Brays, and obviously on Friday night the Cobhs, and they haven't taken those chances. And just going into the last couple of minutes of the first half, Jake Hegarty had a great opportunity from a cross coming from Treaty's right or the Cobh left, and like he really should have scored, which would have put a different complexion in the game. And they'd have been very unlucky to go in 1-1, because they certainly should have been 2 or 3-0 up, I thought. And in the second half, you know, the game kind of changed, and it was Cobh that really missed a couple of sitters. But I felt that if Treaty hadn't got the 3 points, they really would have felt very bad about it. And overall, I thought that they fully deserved the 3 points.
Yeah, certainly. And one confidence booster for them, probably coming out of that game, the clean sheet. No, they have been few and far between for a team that picked up quite a few more, I'd imagine, last season. So that was a confidence booster for the whole team, not just the defensive area.
Yeah, I think so. And look, it isn't too far back where they had the clean sheet in Galway as well. So maybe that things are tightening up there. I have put it on record already that I think Jack Lynch is a major plus at right back, although he had an uncomfortable night on Friday night. But besides that, I think he's a lot more solid than Charlie Fleming was, a better presence around there. He understands how he needs to narrow the pitch and cover his centre halves. And he's certainly able to get the team on the front foot as well in terms of creating attacks and getting forward himself. There seems to be a better chemistry between Callum McNamara and Shane Gearns. Looked a lot more settled on Friday night, and obviously, look, we all know how good Marc Ludden and how consistent he has been, and certainly I thought it was a plus to see Jack Brady black and goals as well. So overall, look, you have a settled back 5 there, and I think they're probably, there's no argument really, or you mean to be broke about who's to play there now, and just hopefully that they can stay fit, and the more games they play together, well, obviously the better that they should get.
Certainly, and I must correct myself for a very poor mistake on my part. I said 2 wins and 3 for Treaty. Obviously, it's 2 wins and 4 for getting the Cork game as well. But as you said, also 2 clean sheets in 4, so that definitely is a positive. Another positive on the evening, Noel, was the 2 first players in the senior men's side in Marc Ludden and Matt Keane to reach 50 appearances for the club. I know that you're a fan of both players, and to be fair, Tommy, you know, paid tribute to them afterwards. They do sound like your model professionals as such in the dressing room, it must be said.
Yeah, I think so. And look, the wealth of experience that Marc Ludden brings is obviously a plus. And look, you know, it's always a bit of a gamble, if you like, bringing in a guy, you know, that's coming towards the end of his career, or what kind of an impact he has, or how interested he's going to be. I suppose we'd have to contrast him with Joe Gorman, and how good that Marc Ludden has been for Treaty. And you know, it's such a difficult position as well to find a good player in, particularly a guy who lacks a bit of experience, I think, for years and years. We'll go right back to the time where your uncle was an outstanding left full for Limerick. But
trying to edit that out so he doesn't hear.
He's been a tremendous addition. And Matt Keane, look, obviously a bit quieter, I'd say, because in terms of he's less games and experience, but I think he's a brilliant player for Treaty always. He's the guy that keeps going regardless of, you know, how tough it's getting. and he knows how to defend, and he creates some chances as well. And he was my tip, if you like, as well. I think he'd make a decent right back as well. But I think the way it's worked out that Jack has gone back there has been just as good.
Certainly, and another reason why it was great for Treaty, I suppose, to get the victories, because they did field a very young midfield as well. Noel, it was different to what we usually see. Obviously, Lee Devitt has been a relative mainstay in the middle of the park for Treaty, but he was joined in the middle by Martin Coughlin and Colin Conroy as well on the evening, who have been fringe players, have been coming off making the sporadic appearances off the substitutes bench, but they got their chance from the start. How do you think those two players fared?
Yeah, it was it's often difficult to really make a real judgment on guys like that, particularly watching on the LOI TV, where sometimes we're looking at seagulls and not what's actually going on the pitch. But look, I thought, in fairness, they did okay. I thought the two Cobh guys, particularly McGrath, who was making his debut, I thought he did well. Like, I didn't think there was a lot of, it wasn't really a midfield battle. A lot of the game was played in the wide areas, and the chances were created out there. But I think Colin Conroy obviously comes down with a real good pedigree from where he's come from, and he's experience of playing in the higher echelons, if you like, of the National Under-19 League. And look, it's no harm to give him games and get him playing week by week, because look, we see the benefit of the likes of Matt Keane and Callum McNamara have got by actually getting game time. And I always said it, like, the games are worth 10 or 15 training sessions, and there's no harm to keep him on the pitch and get him as many minutes as we can. And hopefully, as the season goes on and for next season, we'll reap the benefits of that.
Another thing we've discussed many times in the past with our former colleague, anyway, Jason O'Connor, and yourself, Noel, Willie Armshaw. Always a hot topic, it appears, around Treaty United. Made another impact literally instantly with a goal, capitalising on Luke Desmond's mistake. Desmond had already got a warning only about 10 minutes before that, and continued to do the same thing. But Willie Armshaw was on hand. Good finish from Willie. He's really had to buy this time. I know there was rumours of he was very frustrated about not playing more game time in general, and that he was unhappy maybe during the Cork game. But got his chance the other night. Apart from Tommy is the League of Ireland manager, and I wouldn't claim to know more than Tommy, that's for sure. Obviously, there is a reason he doesn't play Willie Armshaw from the start, Noel. What's your own take on it? Do you think he's just cemented a place now? Is that he's definitely just an impact sub, and it'd be hard to see him starting games?
He certainly seems to be with a super sub, all right, and I agree with you in that. Look, and I would have had it myself. Why isn't this guy starting? Look, Tommy's looking at him at training. Whatever nights they're training, he sees him all the time. He has made a really big impact, in fairness to him, in the season and a half. That was a really big goal for them, to go 2-0 up, because it was one of those games where the longer it went on at 1-0, the more nervous they would have got from, the form, if you like, of the last 8 or 10 games. In fairness to Cobh, they created a couple of unbelievable chances, hitting the post twice, hitting the crossbar twice, and a couple of more chances as well in the last 20 or 25 minutes. So it was a really big goal, and he has done that. Look, if I still think it's probably no harm to give him a start every now and again, and if you can only play 30 or 40 or 50 minutes, whatever, look, it can be the first 40 or 50 minutes or the second 40 or 50 minutes. But I suppose he saw guys going on ahead of him. He seemed to be a bit upset, all right, that night in the Marcus Field last Monday night, because we saw him ourselves heading to the dressing room, if you like, and there was about 65 minutes gone. Actually, Marc and myself, I didn't know what was going on. And look, he has to be mature about it as well. At the end of the day, the manager is the manager, and he has to make the decisions, and that's what you sign up for. And if, I suppose, he's probably looking at the impacts he's making, and maybe he's put it up to Tommy again to say, look, I've come on the pitch and I've got us a goal in a couple of minutes, and give me a start. And maybe Tommy will give him a start, and that's obviously his own decision.
Certainly, and he has been knocking on. He would have knocked on the door with that goal, I suppose, because without maybe being too critical of the other players in those positions, you've Stephen Christopher there, you have Joel Kustrain there. Obviously, we know that Matt Keane, you know what you're getting from Matt Keane when he comes on the field. And in fairness to him, he set up the goal, great cross for the own goal for Ben O'Riordan. I suppose if you're looking at it from Willie Armstrong's point of view, you have Joel Costrain, who's been injured. It's been stop-start. You know, he's probably thinking to himself, I probably should be getting more of an opportunity. I know he has been injured himself, but I mean, in general.
Yeah, look, he's had one, I think, particular injury, hasn't he? Or where he was out for a few weeks. Other than that, he stayed fit. We obviously couldn't say that about Joel Costrain, but I heard the reason. I didn't notice it, but he seemed to be sick actually against Cork, and that's why he came off. It wasn't a physical injury. But yeah, look, there's probably always someone that is overlooked in that. He certainly left his calling card now and got that goal. And I think looking at the team, you know, with Matt Keane playing on the right and Jack Lynch playing on the right, and I always was told by more experienced managers, be sure you're solid on one side. I certainly think that they are solid on that side. And when you've Marc Ludden on the other side, I think Tommy can afford to maybe gamble, if that's the right word, and maybe start Willie Armstrong over there or Joel. I think the last couple of games, he's got a lot of minutes against Stephen Christopher, and it's kind of back to that, you know, thought process where we're saying, well, what has he actually done? You know, or what is he, you know, what has he contributed to the game? And I'm not quite sure. So maybe Willie has a point in terms of your three jobs in football are stopping goals, creating goals and scoring goals. And certainly, you know, for the minutes he's on the pitch, he's certainly delivered on that.
I suppose if you were to pull out stats, Noel, that would probably be damning for another couple of players and really would go in his favour, really, isn't it, in the big moments in games, that's for sure. I know the club tonight, it's something we've discussed briefly last week, the club tonight officially announced the departure of Joe Gorman. We both said that we were quite disappointed, really, with the way the transfer worked out. I'm sure both the player and the club are in some ways too. With the pedigree Joe Gorman came with, the fact that he'd been involved in a promotion team with Longford, Noel. He was with Galway last year, full-time too, under John Caulfield, briefly albeit. His departure has been fully announced. You know, we don't want to vilify players or, you know, scapegoat them by any stretch of the imagination. But I was surprised to see some Treaty supporters saying that he was one of the best players for Treaty this year. I certainly didn't agree with that. But coming into this part of the season now, we mentioned the July transfer window. Do you think, Noel, it's stick or twist for Tommy? Do you think he has to go out and try and sign another centre back, or do you think he will probably focus on getting Mark Walsh back into the team and stick with what he has?
I think both. I think, look, Mark Walsh should be a super addition, you know, as well. And certainly straight away, you'd say that Colm could drop into midfield again, you know, because you're talking about the young chaps that are playing in there at the moment. It's, you know, it's okay maybe against Cobh with similar stature of guys in there, but we'll see how these lads get on maybe against a stronger centre midfield partnership. So certainly get Mark Walsh back fit again, but I do think, and I'm sure he's at it at the moment, certainly needs to bring in a couple of players, and definitely one of those would be a centre half. I think maybe even a centre midfielder, and like every club in the world, you're always looking for someone who might create or score goals for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. That brings us, Noel, to a big game for the club Friday. You've got Longford Town at the Markets Field. It's been two very tight and, albeit, forgive me for saying, dull affairs. In fairness, the game at the Markets Field wasn't so bad in terms of quality-wise, particularly the way the contrasting styles between two teams. Longford are very much get the ball on the floor and play, but it was 2-0 all draws. One at Old Flanker Park, City Calling Stadium as it's called now, and 0 all at the Markets Field. So no goals. You'd imagine that certainly will change by the night, the fact that there's been no goals in both games. You know, it's a real chance, I suppose, for Treaty now to build and try and get a second win and get a momentum going, especially try and get a win in front of their home fans now, because it hasn't been that long ago that they also beat Athlone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 6 points between the two clubs as well. So, you know, a win at the moment on the last few games, Treaty obviously have been looking over their shoulders at Wexford closing the gap, and maybe if they could win on Friday, they're not looking over their shoulders anymore, and they're saying, you know what, we can catch Longford and we can go into fourth.
That probably has gone under the radar a bit, Noel, hasn't it? You know, the fact that I suppose Treaty and Wexford, it's all been about the battle for fifth, but, you know, they're kind of reeling in Longford a tiny bit that it might become a three-way race again if things go that way on Friday.
Yeah, because I remember looking at it a few weeks ago, and I think it could be 9 points or 10 points. Or maybe 9 points with Longford having a game at hand. So it's another big game. Look, they look at that after maybe, but it's a home match and you want to be winning their home matches. I think they are going to have to up the performance again. Certainly not give up as many chances, as they have been doing, even against Cobh, and particularly at the top end, maybe start taking those chances if they do go goal up, and not kind of retreat into their shell, if you like, after going a goal up and miss a couple of chances, and just give those teams an opportunity to come back at them. Because if you do that, unfortunately, the general result is that they will take one of those chances that you give them. But certainly a big game, a game to look forward to, and certainly a very difficult game to predict.
Yeah, it definitely is. Team-wise, I know that I have heard, Noel, that Dean George is struggling after coming off in the game. Not sure if he'll make the starting lineup. Imagine it would be a straight swap then, that Conor Melody maybe would come into that position if Enda Curran isn't back. We don't know about Enda Curran's situation for Friday night, to be honest with you. Obviously, Joe Collins wasn't there either. I'd probably expect Joe Collins to be brought in ahead of Martin Coughlin or Colin Conroy if he was fit, but I'm not sure what you think about that yourself.
Yeah, I think certainly one of them. I wouldn't be disappointed to see Colin Conroy start again. I think he probably needs a run of games. Look, probably better if there was someone with a bit of experience there. I don't know how Lee Devitt is, but certainly either himself or Joe Collins, would certainly be a help to him. And I think that they certainly will have their work cut out there. You'll get certainly a lot of work, that work rate from Conor Melody as well. Look, you'd prefer to see Dean George playing. As I said, I think he's one of the most improved players for Treaty this year, and he's benefited from games as well. So hopefully he's fit to go. And if he is, well, I think that